Gurudev. जय ओम विष्णुपाद परिहंसकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री अभय चरणारविंद भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी शीला प्रभुपाद की, इस्कॉन फाउंडर आचार्य शीला प्रभुपाद की, नमाचार्य शीला हरिदास ठाकुर की, ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Welcome to the morning Bhagavatam class. So today we are reciting the chapter from Canto 3, chapter 21, conversation between Manu and Kardama, and the text number 12. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 12. Jato harsho patan murdana Kshitau labdo manorata Girbistva abhayagranat Priti swabhavatma kritanjali. Jato harsho patan murdana Kshitau labda manorata Giri bistva abhyagranat Priti ma swabhavatma kritanjali. Jata harsho patan murdana Kshitau labda manorata Giri bistva abhyagranat Priti swabhavatma kritanjali. Prabhuji. Jata harsho patan muja Kshitau labda manorata Grigdista abhyagranat priti Sabhavatma kritanjali. Jata harsho patan mudna Kshitau labda manorata Girbistva abhyagranat priti Swabhavatma kritanjali. Patan mudna Kshitau labda manorata Girbistva abhyagranat priti Swabhavatma kritanjali. Mataji, you want to read? Jata harsho patan murdna Kshitau labda manorata Pridvistva abhyagranat priti Swabhavatma kritanjali. What to what trans meaning? Jata harsha, naturally jubilant. Apatat, he fell down. Murdana, with his head. Kshitau, on the ground. Labda, having been achieved. Manarata, his desire. Giribi, with prayers. Tu, and Abhyagranat, he is satisfied. Priti Swabhava Atma, whose heart is by nature always full of love. Krita Anjali, with folded hands. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation, please repeat with me. When Kardama Muni actually realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead in person, he was greatly satisfied because his transcendental desire was fulfilled. He fell on the ground with his head bowed to offer obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Lord. His heart naturally full of love of God. With folded hands, he satisfied the Lord with prayers. Purport. It's a big purport. Let's read first and then we will discuss. The realization of personal form of the Lord is highest perfectional stage of yoga. In the 6th chapter Bhagavad Gita, where yoga practice is described, this realization of the personal form of the Lord is called perfection of yoga. After practicing the sitting posture and other regulative principles of the system, one finally reaches the stage of samadhi, the absorption in the Supreme. In the samadhi stage, one can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his partial form as Paramatma, or as he is. Samadhi is described in authoritative yoga scriptures such as Patanjali Sutras to be a transcendental pleasure. The yoga system described in the book of Patanjali is authoritative, and modern so-called yogis who have manufactured their own way, not consulting the authorities, are simply ludicrous. The Patanjali yoga system is called Ashtanga yoga. Sometimes impersonalists pollute the Patanjali yoga system because they are monist. Patanjali describes the soul is transcendentally pleased when he meets the super soul and see him. If the existence of the super soul and the individual is admitted, then the impersonalist theory of monism is nullified. Therefore, some impersonalist and void philosophers twist the Patanjali system in their own way and pollute the whole yoga process. According to Patanjali, when one becomes free from all the material desires, he attains his real transcendental situation, and realization of that stage is called spiritual power. In the material activities, a person engages in the mode of material nature. The aspiration of such people are to be religious, to be economically enriched, to be able to gratify the senses, and at last to become one with Supreme. According to the monist, when a yogi becomes one with Supreme and loses his individual existence, he attains the highest stage called Kaivalya. But actually the stage of realization of the personality of Godhead is the Kaivalya, the oneness of understanding that Supreme Lord is fully spiritual, and that in full spiritual realization one can understand what he is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and is called Kaivalya, or in the language of Patanjali, realization of the spiritual power. His proposal is that when one is freed from material desires and fixed in spiritual realization of the self and the super self, that is called Chit Shakti. In full spiritual realization, there is a perception of spiritual happiness, and that happiness is described in Bhagavad Gita as the supreme happiness, which is beyond the material senses. Trance is described to be of two kinds, samprajnata and asamprajnata, or mental speculation and self-realization. In samadhi or asamprajnata, one can realize by his spiritual senses, spiritual form of the Lord. That is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. According to Patanjali, when one is fixed in constant realization of the supreme form of the Lord, one has attained the perfection stage as attained by Kardama Muni. Unless one attains this stage of perfection, beyond the perfection of preliminaries of the yoga system, there is no ultimate realization. There are 8 perfections in the Ashtanga yoga system. One who has attained them can become lighter than the lightest, greater than the greatest, and he can achieve whatever he likes. But even achieving such material success in yoga is not the perfection or the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is described here. Kardama Muni saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his eternal form. Devotional service begins with the relationship of the individual soul and Supreme Soul, or Krishna and Krishna devotees. And when one attains there is no question of falling down. If through the yoga system one wants to attain the stage of seeing Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, but is attracted instead to attainment of some material power, then he is detoured from the proceeding further. Material enjoyment, as encouraged by bogus yogis, has nothing to do with the transcendental realization of the spiritual happiness. Real devotees of the Bhakti Yoga accept only the material necessities of the life absolutely needed to maintain the body and soul together. They refrain completely from all exaggerated material sense gratification. They are prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulation provided they can make progress in the realization of the personality of Godhead. So this is a big purport. We'll do Mangalacharan. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurinmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Vaishnavamsha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Krupa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarunda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So this verse, we continuing with the previous verses. Look, Kardama Muni started meditating, doing the dhyana yoga and mixed with devotion, and at the end of this final stage he was able to see the Supreme Lord. In last few verses it was described the Supreme Personality of Godhead was appearing and Kardama Muni was seeing his form and he was very much happy. So before that, all this narration was told by Maitreya. The conversation was happening between Vidura and Maitreya. So Vidura was asking about the Swayambhuva Manu's lineage and Maitreya Muni was explaining, and then as part of that lineage we started discussing about the Kardama Muni and Devahuti. So today in this verse, Kardama Muni saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and after seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through how he was able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of his Dhyana Yoga, the mystic yoga. So with the mystic yoga he was able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and after that he started doing in the today's verse he said he was offering the prayers and other stuff. If you see, just a minute, yeah. So if you see the words in the verse, first is Abhya Granat. So what is Kardama Muni? It's the word Abhya Granat says is satisfied. So why he is satisfied? Because Labdha, having been achieved. What he has achieved? Mana Rata. So his desire was fulfilled. His whatever desire which is there in his heart, he was achieved. He has achieved. So because of that, he was happy. He is satisfied. So what was his desire? His desire was to see Supreme Personality of Godhead through Dhyana Yoga, and he was able to achieve. Then after that, after seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what he did? He became Jata Harsha. He became jubilant. And then Swabhavatma, Priti Swabhavatma. So what he said, after seeing the Supreme Personality, he became jubilant, he was happy, and then his heart was filled with love towards God. So this is what happening after seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then next, what he did? Kritanjali. So he started folding his hands. And then Apatat, he fell down. And then Mardana, with his head. And Giribi, with prayers. So what he did? First he folded hands, he bowed down, and he started offering prayers. So after seeing the Supreme Lord, this is what his reaction. Now, in this purport, not only that, so in the previous verse, I think it was text 7, it was mentioned, Kardama Muni was doing the Dhyana Yoga, the Ashtanga Yoga, but at the same time it was mixed with devotion. That is what it is mentioned in the text 7 purport also. Prabhupada also mentioned. He was doing the Dhyana Yoga as well as with devotion. We'll see how these two can be clubbed in the next subsequent sections. But the Kardama Muni was mainly, he was doing the Dhyana Yoga, and then he was able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this, in the purport, Prabhupada was mainly focusing on Patanjali yoga system, and in some cases he is comparing with impersonal philosophy, how they twist. So everywhere impersonals, what they do? They twist everything according to their own definition. So here in Patanjali Yoga Sutra also, they are twisting according to their, how the twisting is happening, that also we will see. And he's comparing, Prabhupada was comparing mainly in the purport with Patanjali Yoga Sutras as well as Bhakti Yoga, how Patanjali Yoga system is recommending and what Bhakti Yogis are doing, and at the same time how impersonalists are differentiating this philosophy, these sutras and everything. So what is Patanjali Yoga system? Let's before doing the comparative study, we'll try to briefly and try to understand the Patanjali Yoga. So Patanjali Yoga, whatever is sutras, whatever recommended, that is Dhyana Yoga or Hatha Yoga. Those are the things generally we in the current age yoga practice. So it's we can use the word interchange anything. Patanjali Yoga means it's a Dhyana Yoga or Hatha Yoga. We can interchange the words, because when I'm speaking sometimes I may use this Patanjali or Dhyana or Hatha. So that's what I'm trying to explain, that these three are same. So now what is there in the Patanjali Yoga? The basic understanding of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra is its soul is existing, super soul is there, Prakriti. This is what the Patanjali Yoga also mentioning. Same thing what we learned in Bhagavad Gita, Patanjali Yoga is also mentioning these three. And the next one, the soul is conditioned in the Prakriti. So it's a living entity, soul is there in the conditioned soul, conditioned state, it is living in the Prakriti. Means the soul is there in the human, with the living entity's body, physical body, and it is conditioned. When the soul is conditioned, what are the different qualities it exhibits in the condition? So the Patanjali that also explains. There are 5 qualities, these are called diseases of soul. These 5 qualities are avidya, lack of knowledge, lack of forgetting Krishna, not remembering the connection with Krishna. So no spiritual knowledge. This is avidya. The next one is asmita. Asmita, this is the false ego, because you are identifying yourself as a body, not as a soul. And raga means you have bodily attachment. You are more attached to the body. So you lost all the spiritual identity. When you are in conditioned state in the body, the soul is exhibiting all these qualities. And then dvesha, hatred. And at the same, abhinivesha, absorption in matter, which leads to fear of death. You are excessively attached to the matter, and matter is temporary. Then you will have a fear of losing it. That is what, these are the 5 characteristics soul exhibits. So apart from that, these are the five characteristics, diseases which Patanjali is mentioning. And not only that, when the soul is in the body, it is maintained by different vayus. So there are prana vayu, apana vayu, udana vayu. So there are different vayus. The soul is maintained by these vayus. And not only that, when this in the conditioned state, when the different vayus are not balanced, then what happens? The soul started looking outwards. Means you will have senses like eyes, tongue, ear, hands, everything. There are various senses we have, and sense objects are there. So the senses will be interacting with the sense objects. Eyes for seeing for nice movie or sports. Tongue is for, instead of chanting holy name, you will talk all mundane, like any gossips, anything. And similarly, all our senses are external, outward. It was engaged in outward activities. So this is the situation of soul. That's what explained in Patanjali. So it exhibiting 5 diseases. Apart from that, it will be maintained the soul is maintained by different vayus, and the soul is through the senses will be interacting with the outward, external Prakriti. So, because of all these things, you are not able to access super soul. Paramatma, as a Kshirodakashayi Vishnu is there, everyone's heart. But soul is not able to see all these, because of all this conditioned nature, they are not, the soul is not able to see the super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead, the partial expansion of absolute truth. We know absolute truth can be realized in 3 stages, right? So, Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. So, this Paramatma is in our heart as a super soul. So, because of this conditioned nature, we are not able to see the super soul. Next, so Patanjali recommended the process of Ashtanga Yoga. There are different stages. To remove this conditioned nature, so he recommended he explained the process. In the Patanjali, it was also mentioned there are various processes, but he recommended his process is as per Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So there are 8 stages. We all know, but just we will refresh. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. So these are all 8 stages. So briefly we'll touch one by one. Yama means following some strict rules and taking the vows and following those vows very strictly. And Niyama means positive duties. What are you are supposed to do? Like these are some of the things: cleanliness, Swadhyaya, surrendering to higher power. These are all mentioned in the Patanjali Sutra. Higher power, those things also. It's a soul, super soul means super soul is higher power. That is, Patanjali is also accepting. And pranayam, asana, sitting posture. Pranayam means the breathing technique. And pratyahara means you are withdrawing the sense, because withdrawing sense withdrawal. Because your senses are currently in the conditioned nature, it is engaged with the outwards, with all the material nature. So when you do first 4, you will gradually you will be able to withdraw your senses from the external entities. And then you dharana. So once your senses are withdrawn from outside, then dharana means your mind will be filled with supreme Lord. You will be try to always keep in your mind the supreme Lord. Then with the dharana, that is the dharana stage. After dharana, you will be start meditating. So now your mind is fully filled with supreme personality of Godhead. Then focusing on that supreme personality of Godhead, you will be start meditating. And once you see the fine meditation, samadhi state will occur where you will see the supreme personality of Godhead. And then you will see you feel bliss, you feel happiness. So the first 5 are external things where you were trying to regulate your body, all the senses, everything. Once the senses are withdrawn from the external things, then you use to the dharana, dhyana and meditation. When you do a samadhi state will come, during the samadhi state you will see the supreme personality of Godhead. When you see the supreme personality of Godhead, you feel happy. That is where Kardama Muni is experiencing here. So he has also done 10,000 years, right? In the previous verses it was mentioned. He did this Dhyana Yoga for 10,000 years. And after following this Dhyana Yoga for 10,000 years, he reached the supreme personality of Godhead. Means that is a samadhi state he attained. And that samadhi state, he is started feeling blissful. So the same thing, Patanjali Yoga also mentioning that when you reach samadhi state, you feel the spirit transcendental happiness you feel. So this is what, there are so much similarities there between the Patanjali and our Bhakti Yoga path, but there are some differences also there that we will describe. So that's where in the 9 to 11 verses, in this chapter, so it was explained about the Supreme Personality of Godhead feature. Whatever Kardama Muni is saying, that was described, the personality. And now he is feeling the bliss and happiness. Now, one important difference between this Patanjali Yoga and our Bhakti Yoga. See, final stage of Patanjali Yoga is seeing Super Soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What will happen after seeing? There is a slight difference. When we read, when you see the purport of Kardama in the translation and the purport, what Kardama Muni did, he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he felt very happy and he started offering prayers. But not everybody does the same thing. One thing we have to remember. So, offering the prayers is a devotional activity. But in Patanjali Yoga, it doesn't recommend any devotion there. It ends where you will see the super soul and you feel happy. That's it. That is there ends the story with the Patanjali. So, but different people who follow different paths, like impersonalists, what they see, after seeing the super soul, they try to merge with Brahman. And the Patanjali yoga followers, what will they will do? They try to merge with Supreme Lord. And if he's a materialistic karmi person, what they do? They will ask some material desires, money, education. So these are all the various things. But devotee, what he does? Devotee offers prayers. Devotee, you have a loving exchange relation with. That is where actual devotional business starts. He sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then his real business starts from there in the Bhakti Yoga. But whereas in other cases, you see, normal yoga followers, they wanted to merge with Supreme, or they wanted impersonalists, they want to merge with impersonal Brahman. But whereas our Bhakti path, the real yoga devotion starts there, because he is seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And after seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can ask Supreme Personality of God, can you become my son? Can you become my friend? Can you become my lover? So there are various, Krishna exhibits different 5 rasas, right? So devotee can ask any of these rasas to be exhibited, exchanged with Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Supreme Personality of Godhead, according to devotee's desire, he reciprocate. So that is where, if you see the Kardama Muni is offering prayers, it's a devotion. So that is the difference between the Patanjali yoga, normal Patanjali the yoga system, and our Bhakti yoga path. So Bhakti yoga is real business, actual devotion starts after seeing the Lord. But whereas in a normal case, there ends the story, like they will try to merge. See, in the Srimad Bhagavatam it is mentioned, Kamsa was exhibiting enmity towards Krishna. But when Kamsa was killed by Krishna, what happened? He merged with Supreme Lord. Right? So even the people who are exhibiting enmity against the demonic nature against Krishna, they are able to merge in the Supreme Lord. Then why we have to do 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 years of yoga? And finally, what ultimately you are doing? You are merging with the Supreme Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is saying, this is a very abominable condition. After seeing the Supreme Lord, instead of developing the loving devotional service, you are just trying to merge with the Supreme Lord. This is what condemned by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So same thing, we are seeing the Kardama Muni was exhibiting the devotional path. Because now we can understand how he was able to get the devotion. Because Kardama Muni is doing the Dhyana Yoga everywhere which is mentioned, but it is mixed with devotion. Right? Where is that, at what stage, how he is able to maintain these two? That is also we can understand. But before that, I will try one more thing. When we do the Ashtanga Yoga, this Dhyana Yoga, the actual objective is the Dhyana Yoga is to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul. But apart from that, you will get different siddhis, like anima, lagima, like the person can go very small, he can walk very fast, he can become very long. There are 8 siddhis you will get. But these are not the ultimate aim of yoga. This is only byproducts of the yoga. But in the current stage, what is happening? Yoga means just it's a physical material exercise, and we are not looking, our objective is not to see the super soul. That is what in the current yoga practice. There is a story Prabhupada used to narrate explaining the difference between the karma yoga and bhakti yogis. So I think most of you heard. So in a village, there was one person, he followed this dhyana yoga process. He went into Himalayas and forest and did tapasya for so many years. And he came back, he acquired some siddhis. And after coming back, he started walking. Then he wanted to show his siddhis attained to all the village. And what he did, he planned to walk on the water. So there is a river, he wanted to cross the river by walking in the water. So then everybody was coming and watching that event. So and everyone is appreciating. But there is one nice Brahmana was there in the town, but he is not coming. Then he was saying, why you are not interested to watch? He said, very interesting thing. Then he said, I can give 40 rupees to a boatman there, I can cross over. Why I have to spend 60 years, 50 years attaining such a those things? Right? That is the difference of the siddhis we attain through Ashtanga Yoga by following these Patanjali Yogas and the Bhakti, the normal common sense, and that is how we need to see. The ultimate the aim of whatever you achieve after spending so many years, you can do in a different way. You don't need to attain siddhis to walk in the water, to cross over the river. You can take a boat, pay some money and you cross. So that is what the difference between our material condition. We think how that is important in our conditioned nature, but that is not the ultimate aim of yoga perfection. Perfection of is only seeing the super soul of the yoga. But when we mix with the devotion, we can do many things further. Now we will try to understand in Ashtanga Yoga while doing Ashtanga Yoga, how we can do devotion. So that is where, if you see the various different stages of Ashtanga Yoga, like I was reading beginning of the class, like Yama, Niyama, Asana, right? There are different Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. Now, if you see the Yama means moral disciplines, moral vows, like Ahimsa, Satya, those are the speaking truth, those are the moral things. But Niyama is the positive duties, which includes Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means reading scriptures. So before reaching the Samadhi, and you will be doing all these things. And in the Patanjali, it was also mentioned Swadhyaya and surrender to higher power. So when you read scriptures, Swadhyaya, you will understand what is the higher power. Then that is, you can. So when we read the Bhagavad Gita and Swadhyaya means reading scriptures. In our scriptures, it is clearly says Supreme, who is Supreme Lord, who is Krishna. So when you know that through Swadhyaya, you know you will be Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And then when you when you reach the meditation stage, what you do, Dharana stage, you will remember Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And when you in the meditation stage, you will meditate on Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And when you Samadhi state, you will see the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this is why how the Jnana Yoga mixed with devotion, we can see. That's what Kardama Muni did. In the 7th verse, it was mentioned, Kardama Muni was doing the Jnana Yoga mixed with devotion. So how we can do the the devotion during that Ashtanga Yoga? These are the different stages. In the different stages, when the Bhakta, devotee will see, read the Swadhyaya, when he does Swadhyaya, he will understand our scriptures. Then when you see that, when you are finally in the Samadhi state, when you see the Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then you feel happy. Then you will wanted to render the service, because that's what you read in the Swadhyaya as part of scriptures reading. You understand what is Krishna, how we maintain the relation with Krishna, what kind of services we do with Krishna. So that is what, then once you reach the Samadhi state, you will realize and you start doing the service. So that is where we can ask, can you become my friend? Can you become my son? Those things will come because we learned these in the stage of Swadhyaya. So that is how we can do the devotion in the Ashtanga Yoga. Now, another important thing is, we know that from the all Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we know Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are various references. Even Brahma Samhita said, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Sachitananda Vigraha, Anadiradir Govinda, Sarvakarana. Ishvara Parama Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita also, various references are there where highlighting the Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, in the beginning I was mentioning that the Patanjali Yoga is also having soul. They are establishing the fact that there is a soul, there is a super soul is there, and the Prakriti is there, right? So, what are the references where the super soul is? What is super soul? What it is referring? Super soul. So, we are saying Bhaktas as a Krishna, but what so Patanjali Yoga Sutras are saying? So, I have got two references here. There are different, like Patanjali Yoga, it contains each chapter, and each chapter will have different sutras, right? So, one sutra is Sutra 1.23. The name is, the sutra mentioned Ishvara Pranidhana Dva. So the meaning is, inner peace can be achieved through the complete devotion and surrender to God or higher power Ishvara. That is what they mentioned in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And the next one, the Sutra 1.24, it is mentioning Klesha Karma Vipaka Ashayar Aparmushata Purusha Vishesha Ishvara. So what it means? Ishvara is a special soul, Purusha, which is unaffected by sources of suffering, action, the karma, and the consequences of our action or the storage of these actions in our subconsciousness. This Ishvara is not impacted by karma. Like a normal soul, in our material condition state, when we do any activity, we will have a karma. And all the kleshas, the reactions will come, that will be impacted by. But with Ishvara is not impacted by these things. That when you compare the wood, that is what the definition of Ishvara. So Ishvara is not impacted by kleshas, not impacted by karma, not impacted by time. That is what Patanjali Yoga. So obviously, when we compare this with our scriptures, who is he? Supreme Lord. That is how the Patanjali Yoga is meant. But still, impersonalists will twist their own way to juggle this, to suit their narration. So, and now the Patanjali Sutras also talking about this conditioned nature of the soul. Initially, I was explaining briefly about the soul condition. It will be materially conditioned and it will exhibit the various diseases qualities, right? So, but how this soul is maintained in the body? So, as per Patanjali Sutra, the soul is maintained in the body. There are different vayus are there. These different vayus try to balance this soul. So, different vayus are like, example, apana vayu, that goes upward. Vayana vayu, that is shrink and expanding, like our heart will be expanding and shrinking, right? That is due to the Vayana vayu. And samana vayu, adjust the equilibrium in the body. And udana vayu goes upward. So again, so these are all the various vayus are there in the many more. I think there are 10 vayus are there something, but just I am giving the brief example of 4 or 5 vayus. But there is one vayu is very important, that is prana vayu. When the prana vayu is not controlled, that is where your senses start getting disturbed and your senses will be attracting towards outward nature. So the senses are interacting with the sense objects when the pranavayu is not controlled, and through this meditation, this Ashtanga Yoga process, we try to balance the pranavayu. That is where the breathing technique is there, pranayam is there, right? So with that technique, we try to control this pranavayu, then we try to control our mind. With that mind, we will try to bring all the senses inward. Rather than engaging in external objects, it will be bringing into the inward state. So it's like where a strict stubborn child is there, you are trying to make him say discipline. What you will do? You will sometimes, if he is not listening in the polite way, normal way, stubborn child, anyway, whatever you tell, he will not follow. Finally, you have to do very strict action you have to take. Right? Same thing. We are forcing our mind and body and all the senses to disengage from the external objects, but engage in the disengaging. We are not engaging anywhere. Just we are trying to disengage from the external objects. In the Patanjali, this is what it is doing. So rather than, so it is disengaging everything and trying to control the mind and trying to make the discipline. So bring the discipline in our, but what we do in Bhakti Yoga, we don't disengage, rather than we try to engage. That is where Vishaya Vinivartante Niraharasya Deshina Rasa Varjam Rasapyasa Param Drushta Nivartate, right? So we try to do the higher taste. Rather than we're seeing the external things, external material things, rather than we try to see Radha Gopinath, try to see the deity of Krishna. And the tongue, instead of talking Prajalpa, we try to engage in reading the scriptures, chanting holy name, tongue, many other things. Like all other senses are in this way, we are trying to engage in devotional service rather than disengage, because our sense mind is always active. Simply you try to forcefully try to keep it silent, calm, it won't. That is where in the current Kali Yuga, it's very hard to follow this Ashtanga Yoga process. So it's very hard. Every time it's as and when you try to control, after some time again it will go back to original material state. So it's very hard to control. Rather than disengaging is not possible with our thing. So that's why we have to higher raso varjam rasapyasa param dushtva nivartati. The higher taste we have to get. When you do the higher taste, you will not be focusing on these low level material things. That is the difference how the Patanjali Yoga is proposing. Patanjali Yoga strictly hard, strict rules to control all your senses. Whereas we in the devotionals, we try to engage our senses in devotional way. And Yeah, 5 more. It's almost there. Just we'll try to finish it in two more things we'll take and finish. There is a word called kaivalya used in this purport. So this word is also three definitions. Impersonate what they will tell, this kaivalya, and what is Patanjali is doing. So, but what is Patanjali definition? When you the stage of realization of the personality of Godhead is kaivalya. So, when you in the samadhi state, when you withdraw all senses, when you meditate on super soul, and when you see the super soul, that is called kaivalya state. But impersonalist says, what is the kaivalya? According to the Munis, when yogi becomes one with supreme and loses, when he merges in the supreme, the absolute, the Brahman or impersonal Brahma Jyoti, when you merge, that state is a kaivalya. Whereas the Patanjali, it is when you see the realized supreme Lord, that is the stage of kaivalya. But if for bhakti also, what we do? When you feel when we are in the conditioned nature, we do various services. We don't need to leave the body to go to the back to Godhead and supreme abode. We can, within the living in the current conditioned state, when we do the sadhana, we feel transcendental happiness and we can continue the devotion. So we don't need to leave the body to feel that as a supreme pleasure. Within this body also, when we do proper devotional service, we can realize the happiness of that. Whatever through samadhi state, Patanjali yogis are getting, and when merging into the Brahman, impersonalists are getting. But by living in the current state, in the current body, by practicing various devotional services, we can get the same state. And there is a called Chit Shakti is there. Patanjali Yoga Sutra is mentioning. The Chit Shakti means realization of when one is free from the material desires and fixed in spiritual realization of the self and super self, that is Chit Shakti. So this is the Chit Shakti means when you realize that I am the soul, is the Supreme Lord is the super soul, and that when you see in the super soul, that state, that potency, that energy is called Chit Shakti. So this Chit Shakti is a transcendental potency. That's what Patanjali is saying. Even we also know from the spiritual, our understanding, Sat Chit Ananda, Krishna, right? Chit is full of knowledge. That is there we can see it is a transcendental energy. Same thing, Patanjali is also saying that Chit Shakti is a transcendental energy. So same way there are various comparisons it was given. So we cannot compare everything with the Patanjali Sutras here. We don't have a time, but in relation to Prabhupada purport, I took some of the key things as per the purport, just we try to compare. But the conclusion is, the Prabhupada in the 6th chapter, we have a Dhyana Yoga section. And last verse of the Bhagavad, that chapter is, Yoginam apisarveshu madgati antaratmana shaddavan labatu bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mata. So what Prabhupada is saying, bhajate mam, bhakti is the ultimate thing. All these yogas, jnana yoga, karma yoga, those are all there that will help you to get realize the supreme personality of Godhead. But the final important thing is Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate. That's what Prabhupada is recommending. Though for knowledge purpose, we can understand what is Patanjali Yoga, what is Dhyana Yoga, but our ultimate aim should be Bhakti. We should never leave the path of Bhakti. It's easy. Even if you want to follow the Dhyana Yoga, those things, it's very hard to follow. So with the final one quotation, one I heard in some lectures, I wanted to repeat the same thing and I will conclude the lecture. So in that lecture, I forgot which lecture, but the conclusion is, in the current year, everybody is following the yoga, but he's talking about that yoga process. Unless you lose the vasana for material desires, there is no point in doing asanas. So in the yoga, we do asanas, right? Unless you lose the taste of material, unless you use the vasana for material desires, there is no point in doing asana. In the yoga, we do asana. So it's clearly saying that without losing controlling the senses, without controlling the mind, if you simply do the asanas, going to the yoga studio and doing asana, it may improve your physical fitness little bit, but ultimate aim of the yoga, you will not be able to achieve. So this is what the difference between the yoga and the bhakti yoga. And as a followers of Srila Prabhupada and Acharya, various Acharyas, we should try to follow the bhakti yoga path. So this is today's topic. Any comments? ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। गौर भक्त वृंद की जय।